Hello lads. So in my most recent video, I talked about some Doctor Who spin-offs that I'd love to, see happen in the RTD era. And one of those I talked about, I feel like I want to expand on further. I genuinely feel like the Sarah Jane Adventures should come back. Now yes, I am not incredibly ignorant. I know the main reason why the show stopped in the first place, and I know why it can't therefore going forward be called the Sarah Jane Adventures. It was quite sad at the start of this month when it was obviously Elizabeth Sladen's birthday, and that actually got me reminiscing about a show that I really loved as a kid. The Sarah Jane Adventures, while I was growing up, was for me just as good as Doctor Who. See, as a kid, I always loved Doctor Who, the TARDIS, David Tennant, all of those fun adventures, and the elements I loved it for then aren't really the elements I love it for now, if that makes sense. And that's because there are elements of that show that you can really latch onto as a kid, and there are elements you can really latch onto that show as an adult. Ugh, I'm technically an adult. That's disgusting. That's disgusting to say out loud. But the Sarah Jane Adventures as a kid, it was just, I just had so much fun in that world. And that's why I have so much nostalgia for that show, truly. From the theme song to, just the monsters to Sarah Jane herself, it was truly phenomenal. In fact, that was my first window into the classic series, where my dad was a big Doctor Who fan, so when we sat down and watched the Sarah Jane Adventures, he was like, this is a character that existed many, many years ago, and, we then went back and started off with, the Time Warrior, and then we went through, and, we watched all of Sarah Jane, and then I continued on watching more classic Who. In a way, Sarah Jane, with the link to, a lot of the modern Who, and then quite a bit of the classic Who, Sarah Jane was a big window into my Doctor Who experience growing up. But when Sarah Jane got cancelled, I was at an age where I understood why I understood that the actress had unfortunately died and that the show couldn't continue. But I remember seeing that ending of the final Sarah Jane Adventures where they do a little bit of, like emotional montage with a little bit of music and, the final words and the story continues forever. And I'll revisit that last little 3 minutes of that episode very consistently. And it will make me tear up. It really will. But let's get some focus. Let's talk about why this show should come back. I've talked about how Sarah Jane was a brilliant window and, like a link between that show and Doctor Who itself, and that's one of the reasons why it works so well as a spin-off. But what that did was then introduced us to more fantastic characters. Sarah Jane was our window into this world. Sarah Jane was our reason why we cared about the show. And then the show introduces us to Clyde, to Luke, to Raleigh, even Maria. But if I'm completely honest, that show isn't the same without those characters. Obviously, they were a bit older than I was when, but they were almost like role models to me. But they were just a little bit close to my age, but I genuinely saw them as like these role model type characters. And I genuinely think there is so much potential for that type of story. And I think those characters could keep the show moving forward in a very respectful way. Obviously, it's been confirmed with the Farewell Sarah Jane thing that was released last year that Sarah Jane is now like dead within the Doctor Who universe. But I think those characters and those actors could come back together and have more adventures in this world. And I don't think that would be disrespectful to the legacy of Elizabeth Sladen. I think she really loved what she did with Doctor Who and the world and then the Sarah Jane Adventures. I also think there is so much potential for these characters. Because we saw them grow up. We saw them grow, develop, change, and become these really fantastic characters. And I would love to see them and where they're at in their lives. I think that's a brilliant tribute to Sarah Jane and Elizabeth Sladen to see how that character and that actress affected them as characters and actors. Also, from my perspective, Doctor Who was always supposed to not just be a children's show, but appeal to children. For a kid who had a show that was in that universe, but appealed more, was built more for me in the Sarah Jane Adventures, was my hook into this world. I'm someone that never wants Doctor Who to die. I always want new people to be brought into the fandom and love the show and enjoy the world that has been magically created. And having a spin-off that caters to that younger audience can bring people into the fandom. And to be honest, I don't obviously know what my future would have been, but without the Sarah Jane adventures, maybe my love for Doctor Who wouldn't be the same. Maybe it would. I don't know. Obviously, I love the show, but I'm really not sure it would have been the same. I don't know. I think there's a genuine chance that my love for the show was truly heightened by the Sarah Jane adventures. I also think one of the things the Sarah Jane Adventures does really, really well is give a platform to those monsters that are a little bit more silly. For example, the Slitheen, I know a lot of adults, and I know me looking back, kind of look on the Slitheen and think, oh, bit naff in Doctor Who. But you forgive that sort of thing in the Sarah Jane Adventures because it's the kids' show, and sometimes Doctor Who is allowed to be silly. To be honest, I look back on a lot of Doctor Who Series 1 and I think cheesy fun. And it's dated, yes, I mean, it came out over 15 years ago now, but you can still have a lot of fun with cheesy fun Doctor Who. I never want Doctor Who to completely forget that it is allowed to be a bit cheesy. So to summarise this slightly unorganised video, I think a revival of the Sarah Jane Adventures, called whatever you want, would be a brilliant tribute to Sarah Jane Smith, a brilliant tribute to Elizabeth Sladen, will bring more people and people in the fandom, expand the universe a bit, and allow the show to keep some of its cheesier roots. Hope you've enjoyed. If you want to hear me talk more about some of the spin-offs I think would really work well in RTD2, you can click the card here. Click it.